I'm the cop.
And I'm the robber.
And this is Cops and Robbers Talk. Hello and welcome. My name is Chief Chris DiGiuseppi, and we are here at copsandrobberstalk.com. I am joined by my co-host, the famous, well, from infamous to famous, Larry Lawton. How you doing, Larry?
Thank you, Chris. Welcome to everybody. Welcome to our guests, and hope everybody had a happy New Year. Merry Christmas, right?
Merry Christmas. Almost Happy New Year, right? We're getting there. We're getting there. Yeah, and speaking of guests, we have two special guests with us today. We have Eric Alexander and Brandon Bridges. Wanted to bring these guys on. They are going to be part of our new podcast called Building Bridges. This is something you're not going to want to miss. This is a podcast where we actually bring in law enforcement, like myself, police chiefs, law enforcement leaders, and we bring in members of the African-American community. We sit down, we have a real talk. This is something actually that people have said to me before, oh my gosh, you're going to do that? You're going to really have that talk? You know, that could be risky, this and that. Hey, you know what? If we don't communicate, Larry, nothing gets done, right? If we don't have those real conversations. I know that's what Larry has built his show on, having those real conversations and giving us perspective. Eric's also part of a group called Stand United. We'll be bringing some other members of Stand United in, our friends Justin and James, and interesting on how this group actually got together and met. There was a protest. It was back during, I think, the George Floyd incidents. That came together with law enforcement, sat down, had real talks, offered great perspective, education both ways, and that's something we hope to accomplish on this new show called Building Bridges. So anyway, today's episode, Larry, today we're going to be talking about the Daniel Penny case, kind of a hot case that's going on right now. Are you familiar with it, Larry?
I'm very familiar with the case, Chris. We have a lot to talk about on this case.
Yeah.
Because I think this is a part of the problem we have with law enforcement in the communities.
Mm-hmm. And see, Larry always starts out, this is the problem we have with law enforcement in the communities. He gets Larry has a paintbrush that's the size of a Volkswagen. He gets that out, he dips it in the paint, and he just starts slashing. But that's okay. That's okay.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. We got to beat Larry back and take the paintbrush out of his hand.
Chris knows. Wait a minute. Chris knows. I'm a big supporter in Chris and what they do at Lacey Lewis.
And
some departments I'm very, very critical against, and some I'm very positive towards. I'm very neutral.
Yes.
And that's the way it has to be. But we do need to educate people.
We do need to educate people. And you know what? There are times when I'm critical of law enforcement also, Larry. So we agree.
You are.
On some things we agree. But nevertheless, today, talking about the Daniel Penny case, just a little bit of overview. It was 2023, New York City. Daniel Penny is he's a former military, U.S. Marine. He's on the subway, and there is another person named Jordan Neely, apparently, that is on the subway. Jordan Neely starts acting up and says, according to media sources and such, says that he was not afraid to die or go to prison, so on and so forth. Starts making some of these indications of, mental health problem. Apparently, I guess Penny felt that he was in fear of his life or somebody else's life. He put him in a chokehold, and subsequently, Mr. Neely dies from the chokehold. So, and Larry, I believe they went ahead and they charged Mr. Penny. And do you know what the charges are, Larry?
Yeah, they charged him with attempted first-degree murder, I think it was.
Yeah.
Or it could have been first-degree manslaughter, I think.
Yeah. So let me try to look it up, and I'll see that. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, no. Well, you looking that up, Chris. I'll tell you what the case reminds me, and I know I'm going to age myself here. I'm sure I'm the oldest in the room. Do you guys remember Bernie Getz in the subway killings in New York City?
Vaguely.
Yeah. They even made songs. I remember Billy Joel had a great song. We Didn't Start the Fire and a whole bunch of stuff. And he was in that. He was a vigilante. He went on the subway. He was an old, middle-aged, 35, 40-year-old scrawny guy.
Yeah.
And he waited to get robbed, and he did. Of course, kids were robbed, and he shot 5 of them, 4 of them, I think it was.
Yeah.
He ended up going to trial too, and he won. But there's a big backlash on vigilantism and how the New York PD have to get more people to subways and whatever it is. And so I'm in New York a lot. I was just there this year, 3 times this year, and I do take the subway when I'm there if I'm up and downtown because I'm in Manhattan. And I'll tell you the truth, I don't feel it because I come from a neighborhood that's got everybody as a murderer or a killer. Go to USB Atlanta, everybody there is a murderer, a hitman.
That's what I was a little.
Yeah, subway's a little safe. So my point though being is I didn't feel it, but people are feeling it because I asked around a lot. How do you feel? Oh, it's not safe anymore. People are doing this. And I don't know if it's just mismanagement and policing. I think part of it is. There's a very us against them mentality up there. And that's what I'm trying to break kind of around the whole world. So
Right. Yeah. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. Says what I'm seeing is grand jury. They met and they charged him with 2nd-degree manslaughter and then a lesser charge of criminally negligent homicide a few weeks later. So that was added afterwards, criminally negligent homicide after the original manslaughter charge.
That's common, Chris. That's called a superseding indictment. That's common with all cases. That's why I'm waiting for the case with P. Diddy. He cannot be charged with what he's been charged with because he's under a RICO, and a RICO's 2 or more. So I'm not going to get into the lawyer. Law is a lawyer. But in this case, it's really common sense. I always believe that the law, and I'd like to ask the guests too, I'm a believer in common sense, period. Whatever's we have gotten so technical with the law that we take away the common sense part of it and say, wait, what's right, what's wrong, what would a normal person do? And that's what I think we need to get back to.
Yeah. And in this case, Manhattan District Attorney put forth the charges. A lot of time, and I've seen this too, Larry. I don't know if you've seen this or not, but there's times when, and I question this. Did you review the actual charges that fit the elements of the crime, if there was a crime there, and did you apply those charges or did you stack the charges? In other words, have you ever seen this to where, hey, we're going to throw a whole bunch of charges at somebody and we're going to stack the charges and we're just going to hope one of them sticks? That to me sometimes is not the pathway to justice.
But Chris, it's you do it all the time, Chris.
You can do it. See, look at that. I do it all the time, guy. I do it all. I didn't know you had that much power. I do. In fact, I'm going to charge Larry with 16 things by the time we're done with this podcast. Then that's 16, right? Yeah. But this is where me and Larry will do battle. Go ahead, Larry.
No, guys. Honestly, law enforcement does it. At least in Florida. Let's say that, Chris. Oftentimes they charge a guy with resisting arrest when he just says, "Come on, what are you doing to me, man? Why you pull away?" Resisting arrest, or resisting arrest with violence by just pulling his hand away. And they do that on purpose. So every charge on there, when you get up in front of him and your lawyer starts negotiating with the prosecutors, hey, we'll drop this, and take this, or it's a way for prosecutors. But I think it's totally wrong. It's against their ethics. See, a prosecutor, their ethics are not to win at all costs. A prosecutor's job is to seek justice, period. Whether it's wrong or right. If they find evidence that the guy's innocent, they should bring that out and say he's innocent, he's not. Now, a defense attorney is a whole different animal. They are to defend the client at all costs, period. And that's the end of that. That's their job. That's literally their job. But prosecutors, you could like her or not. I don't. Nancy Grace, she claims to this 100 case, never lose a case. Well, if you're never losing a case, then you're not doing something right. Something's wrong. You're either doing only the heavy hitters, or
something.
You could insert. What I'm getting at is we need more community-minded prosecutors who want to just see the community.
I agree with that, Larry. What I'll say is that with law enforcement, this needs to be absolutely flushed out. Number one, law enforcement does not operate on the same burden of proof that a prosecutor operates on. And I can tell you behind the scenes, this is one of the things behind the scenes. You will have times, frequent times, where law enforcement and the prosecutor, the DA, aren't on the same page, right? The cops will go, I can't believe, why can't they do this? Why can't they get this person charged? Why can't we do it? And it's like, you got to understand, I tell police officers this too. You got to understand that prosecutor's got to take that to court. What we need is we need a level of proof, probable cause, right? Crime was committed, crime's going to be committed. We have some type of evidence that that crime's going to be committed. More probably than not, this is the suspect. But that's not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. That is a high burden of proof, and that's what that prosecutor has to prove. So when they get these charges that come up and the prosecutor goes, I'm not going to be able to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt, they drop those charges. So as far as everything Larry's saying is, well, the police take and they stack these charges because he brushed up against them. Technically, that's an assault. That's assaulting a police officer. But, is that a great charge? Is that a great case? No. And I'll say it. No, I don't think so. I think that's, that gets kind of hokey. However, the plea bargain has become such a portion of the criminal justice process, Larry. Don't you think that occurs because they're trying to vie for a plea or they're trying to vie for an outcome? And I agree with you, Larry, on the I guess the goal of law enforcement and the prosecutor is to find the truth. That's what I always want. I want to find the truth. Did you commit the crime? If you didn't, then I should be trying to prove you innocent. And a wise mentor of mine once told me, if you want a solid investigation, criminal investigation, try to prove the person innocent. And when you can't, it's a solid investigation. It's going to be a solid case in court.
Chris, we did that in law. Going through law school, you do the same thing. You take a side, and I tell people to this day who come to me with cases that says, let me fight the case. Tell me the whole thing. And I rip it apart right away. And they go, oh, you don't believe me? I said, no. Now, if you can get by me, you're going to have some kind of a case.
Right.
You're not going to have a case because I'm very, very technical on that kind of stuff. And what happens, Chris, and you know this, when they put a lot of charges on somebody, and we all watch it, guys. We're all on TV. We watch YouTube. We watch this stuff. And they got these guys going crazy and crazy. And then and it comes out at the end. He gets 6 months probation. It's all wiped out. See what happens with prosecutors and the charging. See, what people don't know, and I hate to give these hints and tips, most places, lawyers waive speedy trial, which is the stupidest thing you can do. Because in the state of Florida, it takes 5 months for an official court-ordered drug test to come back positive. So if a cop catches you with drugs in your car, and this is not DEA, let's get away from those guys. Those guys are the pros. They know what they're doing. There's a whole different animal with those guys. When we're talking about a cop pulls you over and he catches you with an 8-ball of cocaine in your car, by the time it takes that in Florida for that test to come back official, that'll do a field sobriety test. That doesn't mean anything for court. When it comes back, it takes 5 months. If there's any delay at all, or if the prosecutor didn't put it in quick enough, or if the cops didn't process their paperwork quick enough, you will be speedy trial. They'll never make speedy trial. Most attorneys, the first hearing they go to is, let's waive speedy. Well, they waive speedy because they want to make money. A lawyer wants to make money. The more times a lawyer gets called by you, it's half, they charge by the 15 minutes. We all know that. So how it works is, if you're smart with the law, you understand how the processes work. And Chris, I give you guys credit because it is harder for cops to catch a case right there, do everything right, catch it in the right way, and then go to completion. Now, what do I think they should do about that? I think they should weed out the bullshit. And I mean, stop it. You got a guy who did an armed robbery, get him for an armed robbery. If he bumped into a guy, go throw 5 charges on him. Oh, he went through 7 lights. Yeah, do we really give a shit about the 7 lights he went through when he just robbed somebody for, and tied people up,
Well, and I think we're, go ahead and interject here. I think we're missing the elephant in the room, right? And it's politics.
Well, we just do it up. No, then you look through and gets up. What's the cutest? It's just
That goes both ways, though. A police union or a state united, right? Or all of these, we're so polarized in this country right now that there is an advocacy group for everything.
Right.
And I think that is, whether it's a prosecutor who's looking for a 100% win rate, or to say, hey, look, I'm tough on crimes. I threw 17 extra charges on here.
Right.
I think that's the driver.
Well,
it feels like a lot of this.
And let me expand on that. Excuse me, because I was having the same thought, and it's not politics, but politics is a symptom of a larger problem, which is not everybody's working in good faith.
Yeah.
Right. Larry, I like what you said about what's common sense here, right? We're not worried about common sense. Chris, you just talked about, you should be looking for the truth, but not all cops are looking for the truth. Not all prosecutors are doing their job in a way where they're trying to do the best by people in the community. And as much as we sometimes don't want to think about it this way, the people who are offending are part of that community.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And depending on where you are, the system may not be working to do right by those people as well.
Yeah. Sure.
So I think it expands a little bit on what Brandon was talking about, but we were kind of having the same thought, right? Which is, this is all best case. I tell Chris this all the time. We've been friends for a minute. And I'm like, not everybody's you, Chris.
We're gonna be breaking that down on our other podcast, building bridges, because I'm gonna bring. Larry says this to me all the time. Eric says this to me all the time. Oh, no, you're different. I'm telling you, I'm gonna be bringing some police chiefs, some other police leaders in. You're gonna see that they're not different. There are other people.
You're not the only one.
Just like me.
But Chris,
just speaking up, maybe.
When you bring them in, Chris, I'm going to do some research, and I'm sure. So they better be on point, because we'll call them out. And I've done it. I've gotten some heat here where I live. You know that.
Yeah.
Because I'm not worried about that. I've done my time. I know what I do. I know where I'm at in life. And I come from the hood. I come from the inner cities in the Bronx and Brooklyn, where we used to throw TV sticks, old TV stick at the police cars back down on the bottom. We did crazy shit.
Yeah.
And now I'm a big supporter of good police. Right?
Sure.
People say, Larry,
So am I.
be such a stand-up convict. Never. I went away for all that time. I didn't rat with the mob, the whole works. I've still got great reputation. Is because I'm telling it like it is. That's why I try to tell the youth, stop it with the rat and shit. You don't know what ratting is. You two kids think ratting is ratting on that lady who told on you. That lady should go to the police, pick you out of a lineup because you're an idiot. And that's it.
Right.
Ratting is when you and your buddy do a crime and he gets caught on something and he wants to get out of that crime by telling on you. I don't believe in that. I'll never believe in that. I believe in you accept your responsibility for what you did and you don't do that bullshit. Anybody on this road, they're called civilians in my life. Civilians can do anything they want. They robbed my mother. Come on, Mom. Who did it? Let me catch them. But obviously.
And you would turn them into the police, Larry. I know that Larry's always reformed. I got to keep Larry on track. It was entertaining when he did his Grand Theft Auto video review. I got to bring this up every podcast where I have to lecture Larry. At the end, he does this whole review. I don't know what it was, an hour plus. At the end, he goes, oh, by the way, don't do the robbery. I'm like, no. Lead with don't do the robbery, Larry. Thank you.
Not everybody watches it.
I know.
Exactly. It's a good one.
And something you touched on, Chief, though, I want to circle back on. The word common sense, right? There's a phrase that common sense isn't common, right? So I'm a big fan of First Amendment auditors, right? Mm-hmm. And I know that in that, a lot of people can say, well, common sense, Larry, please let me know your thoughts on this. You shouldn't be sitting outside videotaping. Well, yeah, you shouldn't videotape inside of a woman's room. There are some common sense things that we can all agree on. But I also think that if I'm standing outside a public space, videotaping, it doesn't really matter what someone else's common sense is, right? I mean, I think that's where you have to have, I'm a big constitutionalist. You have to have a set of defined rules, laws, because common sense is to the beholder, right?
Sure.
You may say I shouldn't drive with a coffee in my hand, and I say I should.
Right.
What's the law on that, right? I think that's where we drive to. So.
Well, and it goes to the point of, I'm a big believer in the Constitution. I mean, I took an oath to defend it. I'm going to do that. I'm going to stand by that. So, the First Amendment is very near and dear to my heart, just like the rest of the Constitution is. And yeah, you do have a constitutional right. What I find is people have a belief of what their constitutional right is and isn't. When you start encroaching on other people's constitutional rights, you don't have a constitution.
Well, wait, Chris. Nobody has their other constitutional rights. The constitutional rights are the constitutional rights.
Correct.
He is 100% right. I actually, I collaborate with some of the First Amendment auditors. I know them personally.
Sure.
I'm doing something actually in January with Long Island Audit, and you guys probably know who they are. Anyway, all these guys, I'm a big believer in them. First of all, most cops, sadly, Chris, and I will take it to the department, every cop should have in the top pocket their First, Second, Fourth, Fifth, Sixth, and Eighth Amendment rights in their pocket, and they should study them. You don't need to know about housing officers in time of war. Forget that in the third, So we need to, the people in law enforcement who are defending the Constitution of the United States, they go, well, I'm here to defend the Constitution. You don't know the Constitution. How can you defend something you don't know? And it's not subjective. It is totally cut and dry. Obviously, the Supreme Court takes care of all the other little bullshit we're going to go through. But as far as he's right, I'm a believer. But what I meant with common
I'm a believer
sense,
too. Go ahead.
now I want to go with the common sense is you can't put everything in the Constitution. We have 27 amendments. We have, it's first the Bill of Rights, the 10, and you get the next 17 and blah, 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 take away, give away, all that bullshit. If you take those, we can't cover everything in life expectancy, where I think common sense or the norm. I don't know how you would sit at common sense. If you take 1,000 people and 850 people, this is the right way, that's probably common sense. Could be wrong, but that's where the Supreme Court comes in, or somebody else comes in. But I think the people who are in charge of laws, prosecutors, police officers, the reason I hold cops in such a high degree is meaning that they have to be held to a higher standard because they have the authority to take a person's liberty and or life under the color of law.
Well, they have to be held
that.
in that standard because we have that authority while they're doing the job, Larry. But do you believe that police officers still have a First Amendment right to speak their mind?
Yes, if I believe that, and I do, I also believe that they should be held to the same standard. They shouldn't have qualified immunity as easy as they do.
Oh, well, we're going to get in a big battle over that one, but that's in a later discussion where me and Larry actually get into studio so we can throw some punches at each other.
It'll be
Start selling tickets.
Yeah, that's going to be paper.
per view for sure.
But what I'm saying is when you to the point where you have a First Amendment right for free speech, and I get it. What I'm saying is, and I'm not talking about the legitimate, people that are doing the First Amendment audits, things like that. What I'm talking about is there are people that'll go, well, I have a First Amendment right. I can say whatever I want. I can go up and I can yell and scream obscenities in somebody's face and this and that thing. And it's like, no, you don't, because you commit a peace disturbance. You're encroaching on that other person's rights and you're victimizing them. You don't have the right. See, that's what I'm saying. People, there's certain people, I won't paint with that broad brush you got, Larry. Certain people don't understand what that means. So they'll go and they'll violate the law and they'll victimize somebody else. And then they'll come back and they'll go, well, that's my constitutional right. No, it's not.
A lot of people misunderstand that.
Right. So
They do that because it's like the old theory of the fire. You can't scream fire in a crowded movie theater.
Right.
You have the right to speak your mind, but you can't do that by putting,
people's lives
they call it an untold risk on other people.
Right. And they misunderstand that the First Amendment applies to the government. The government is close to you.
Excuse me. Absolutely.
But your employer can fire you. Your neighbor can call the police. They interpret the First Amendment,
right,
freedom of speech as freedom of consequence for speech, and that's not the same thing.
Right. And we are trained and educated in that on constitutional rights. It's the thing that we do, and we try to respect it. But it is hard, Larry. It's not, sometimes it's not cut and dry when you have these other people that are encroaching on, or they're committing a criminal offense, but yet they're trying to say that, they're just invoking their constitutional rights and stuff. And we kind of get into that splitting hairs with, when you get into minor crimes. And you're right, it's got to be common sense. If you have a local ordinance that says, hey, you can't put signs in your yard. Well, if that's a freedom of speech sign, can you? So I mean,
Well, local law nothing can take the Constitution out. You can't.
you can't take
There's no
Constitution
local
out,
law. No,
but you
can't.
can regulate certain things, and that's where there's a fine line there, and it's difficult. And those are more, petty things. Those are more, things that aren't that serious. But anyway, getting back into the Daniel Penny case, we see that these two charges came about. They and the way that it progressed is, and I want you to hang on to that thought, Brandon. The political pressure, the politics that were involved and things like that. But apparently, one charge, it was the more serious charge, right? The manslaughter charge was initially dismissed. The jury was deadlocked, right, Larry?
Yeah,
And
jury.
it was a hung jury. Jury was deadlocked, and it was dismissed. And I'm going to try to find. I'm going to try to find some information on that.
Well,
but-
I can tell you what happened, Chris. What happened
ahead.
is they kept coming back and asking for more information on the case. It kept coming. They cannot get to a decision. So it's a hung jury. Sometimes they'll just dismiss it without prejudice. With prejudice means they can't bring it back. Without prejudice, and then they're going to recharge him if they want, whatever. But then the judge just said, let him go to the lesser charge. And then they found him not guilty on that. And I think that was a political move, like someone was just saying. I think there's more to that than meets the eye. People are getting sick and tired of it.
It sounds like that the prosecutor said that they were going to. The prosecutor asked the judge to dismiss the top charge, is what I've got from media sources, and the jury was sent home. Let's see, early in the week, jurors asked to review police bystander video. So he asked to dismiss the top charge, and I guess the premise was, or maybe the speculated thought process was, we'll dismiss that top charge. The jury's going to have to come back and convict in this secondary charge. And what happened is the jury came back and they said, no, he's not guilty of the secondary charge.
Well, it's just like the Casey Anthony case. I was an expert on that case, and they had nothing to get her on. It was either the first-degree murder, and they proved that was beyond a reasonable doubt on Kaylee Anthony, the kid. And what happened was she ended up getting convicted on lying, literally lying, and she ended up doing a few years in prison. But she was found innocent. Now, of course, double jeopardy. Once a jury is sworn, that's where double jeopardy comes in. People think, they just can't recharge you. No, if they dismiss it or something else, they can recharge you. But if a jury is sworn, they can't. Then that's a whole different animal. And so what a lot of times prosecutors do was we'll put a lesser charge, hoping people, I'm not sure about that exactly because that's life. But if they got 10 years for this, it would be right and stuff, which is wrong. I don't think they should do that. They should charge them with what they think they have, prove it beyond a reasonable doubt without,
Right.
And then go from there. But are we just throwing people into buckets? Are we just listen, there's so many situations. I can go into the sentencing guidelines and I'll do that. You take kids from a minority community and you take kids from a rich community. You cannot tell me they do the same. You cannot. I don't care how you look at it. One kid's growing up with gunshots in his ears. Dad's in jail. His mom's a whore. And then you grow up with this other kid who's a doctor, just a spoiled ass bitch. So
It's a technical term too, guys. That's a technical Larry Lawton term, FYI.
You gotta be. I think that's a perfect highlight, though. And then, sorry to interject on you there, Larry.
no, please.
Everything we've talked about is exactly why this case is so polarizing. Common sense, right? If you walk out today and you're in the parking lot and you see a guy hitting a girl, she's screaming help, most people would interject, would think common sense would say this is someone who needs help. But how many times they're out there, well, that ends up being the boyfriend, the cops come, and then they want you arrested for interjecting, right? You look at this same situation, and that is when we talk about common sense, that's where we differ, right? Daniel Penny sat on a bus, and whether right or wrong, his common sense was he saw an action, he thought he needed to intervene, et cetera, et cetera. There are others on that same bus who saw the same thing with a different common sense who said, nah, I should leave them alone. I should stay out of it, mind my own business.
Well, and there's some to be said for the ability to hear it, right? I've been studying martial arts for half my life. And I'm I'm equipped and able, physically, mentally, emotionally prepared to intervene in something like that. But when I see somebody who, and I don't know, obviously, I don't know Daniel Penny.
Yeah.
I've heard conflicting reports based on how he's been portrayed in the media. I don't know what we can actually say we know about this guy.
Right.
But when I look at this as somebody with my skill set, I'm like, you see a woman, somebody putting hands on his wife, girlfriend, whatever. And I'm thinking, if I go over there and intervene and things escalate,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody ends up dead, then I ruin my life.
Yes.
Right. Because even if you're acquitted of these things, right, the cost of representation and, people lose their jobs and, social media, the what do they call it? The court of public opinion.
The court of public
So
opinion, absolutely.
are you inviting that? So I think there's a question about this, and not to get too big and broad here. I know you're kind of trying to go through the actual details of the case, but
Well, no, actually, that's a good segue into this next part.
do we want people to do this? And if we want people to do this, we can't be, to Larry's point, Chris's point, stacking charges. And the thing that you said that's bouncing around in my head, and Larry, you're getting at it too, is, were you charging the facts of the case, based on the facts of the case, or were you charging based on this bad faith?
Yeah.
Other bad faith elements, whether that's politics or your social political orientation or whatever, right? And so that's something that I am, I won't say terrified of, but it's something that lives in my head.
And that's a good segue, Larry, into this next portion, because there's stories out there now of another incident where a woman was burned to death on the New York City subway, and they're coining this the Daniel Penny effect, where people just stood by and watched this and didn't intervene. And the question has to go back. I mean, let's circle back to the Daniel Penny case. Might be different for me because I'm a police officer, law enforcement officer, but I'm going to throw it out to people who aren't. You're on the subway. Eric's already told us. You're on the subway, and this person starts acting up, and they say, "I'm not afraid to die. I'm not afraid to go to prison." Larry, when you hear that, "I'm not afraid to go to prison. I'm not afraid to die," what's that spark in your head? Mental health danger.
That's easy to say before you're on your way, right, Larry?
Yeah. It's funny. I often tell people and police chiefs, and when I teach an academy or something, nobody ever gets out of prison and says, it was good there. I'm going back.
Right.
Nobody ever says that.
Right.
It's, I'll kill a cop before I go back.
And you know what that does
Never
with
go
us? That puts us on edge. Every time somebody says, "I'm not going back to prison," our threat level goes through the roof. Every cop goes, "Oh boy, I need to gear up for this." If I could tell people what to not, if you want to de-escalate, don't tell the cop you're not going back to prison. Don't tell the cop, "I'm not afraid to die." Those are because
that's cop, of course that's suicide by cop. There's a lot of things you can go into. But what happens is we're blessed as human beings, all of us. A study was done and I actually saw it myself. I owned horses. So my horse used to try to knock me off, I had to put a tie down now. So the guy in the ranch says, "Larry, do you want the horse to stop that?" I said, "Yeah." He's a cowboy. I mean, a cowboy's cowboy. Bronco champ. I bought the horses. I was an old gangster at the time. He gets on the horse. That's off. Has a beer bottle full of warm water. The horse does this. He smashes it over his head. Stop, animal rights people. Do not email me. Do not say anything.
Okay, that's Larry Lawton.
That's me. But listen, guys, for real, it does not hurt the horse. I'm just letting you know.
It doesn't hurt the horse.
No, a spot here that if you ever own a horse, you'll understand. What happened was the warm water went down over the horse's head. The horse's hoofs went out. It never lifted again. It will never forget. It thought its own blood was going into it. So it won't do that. Now, we are blessed as human beings. I've been through a lot, Chris, from being tortured to abuse to a lot of things. And I am blessed through the miracle of being a human being to put that aside, get better. That's why people recidivate. They forget how bad it is. Everybody knows how sucky it is in there.
Yep.
It's worse than you know.
Yep.
But we are blessed with that ability to put that behind us, move on in life, and use it. That's what I try to use it for, is to educate others not to do the things that I did.
Absolutely.
But what happens is the inmates that do that are just in a state of, I don't care. They're willing to die.
Right.
They know there's no good ending. If they go back, it sucks. If they get caught, it sucks.
Right.
You know, where am I at? And until they could get de-escalation to the point where I believe that guy that's talking to me, that cop. But, you know, they've been through too much. You know, I come from the blame. They tell us everything in the world, and then it doesn't happen. And you say, hey, why do you listen to the fucking cops? Are you crazy? Why are you listening to them? You know they're going to lie to you. Again, they might be lying to you to get you to de-escalate a situation and not shoot a neighborhood up or whatever it is. But there's really that fine line, and these guys were really right. It has a lot to do with politics, has a lot to do with how we are perceived by the police, and we perceive the police.
Right.
You know, that's a big, big problem.
Right.
When a cop car comes down my neighborhood back in the hood, there was nothing positive about it. Nothing. So it was, oh shit, who did what? That's pretty much what it was. You know, who are they after? Oh man, did you see them? They looked at my house long. Oh shit, they're looking for me. So it's not like that. You know, we need to change it from the core, Chris.
And yeah, and you know, and that's what we're trying to do. We, you know, because community policing does work, Larry, but you know, it doesn't work without the community and the police. Hence why we're having our Building Bridges podcast, where we're going to talk about that. But you know, without it, I've always said this: passive policing doesn't work. Over-aggressive policing doesn't work. You got to be assertive and right down the middle. When we get into, and I've seen this, Larry. Look, you know, we're talking about Manhattan, and I don't know the Manhattan district attorney. Maybe you know him,
I know
Larry. So, but when we get into these major urban areas, I can tell you from policing standpoint, the trend that I have been seeing is where we have district attorneys and such that have, I don't know, just started a war with police. I mean, we had one in our area where it was just, and crime goes through the roof because the push is to not police. For community policing, you have to have the community and the police on the same page, but you have to do some police work. And with the police work, you have to stop people from committing crime. You can't just, you can't just find an alternate way. And that's how the whole defunding the police movement came about, because we're just going to find an alternate way to stop people from committing crime other than having the police enforce law, other than having the police arrest people and stop them. It's just, we have a terrible problem. Larry, you and I talked about this. We have a terrible problem right now with juveniles. Not a lot of people know about this because everything is confidential with juvenile reports, juvenile crime. The media doesn't get those reports. You can't see it. But with juvenile crime, people that are under the age of 18 committing crime, it's just out of hand. And the reason that it's out of hand is because in certain areas, especially our major urban areas, they're not held accountable. And we'll have people in the Juvenile Justice Administration, not all of them, not painting with that broad brush, but we have some that'll go, no, we got to help kids. We don't need to detain them. We don't need to do anything else. We need to help them. We need to get them counseling. I agree with that. But my premise on that is the first thing you need to do is you need to stop them. If a kid's stealing a car at 13 and he's not going to be an adult till 18, if you don't stop him, and I know cases where the police pick up a kid, stolen car, you know what they do, Larry? They take him back home. You know what he does? He goes back out and he steals another car. And it's a repeat. That kid is not learning. You are not helping him.
But
by not
that kid
stopping
into
him.
the brush, Chris. You can't put that kid into the brush of all kids.
No, but if you let that person
Nobody's saying you
commit a crime, and that's what's happening. That's what I've seen in our criminal in our area and in some of our areas, not everybody.
Well, Chris, let me get back to what one of the young men said about politics. It's so true.
Mm-hmm.
A big problem with politics is you get a district attorney, but what are they? They're an elected official. So they come out, I'm hard on crime. I don't care. You're getting robbed. And you've been robbed. And your neighbor's been robbed. And whatever's been robbed. And we need to stop this shit. We got somebody who's going to be tough on crime. So it becomes a political thing instead of a help thing or a public service. People don't know that most of your district attorneys, they're all, I love when I talk politics or I talk voting with people and I go, who's your local congressman? They have a clue.
No idea.
They haven't a clue. And that's the one that's going to affect you the most. You want, you want a traffic light to stop a death that people we
But again,
go there.
yeah, absolutely. Again, I've seen district attorneys and prosecuting attorneys that do a good job, that but they do look at common sense things and they are appropriate. But I've also seen district attorneys, the opposite of what you're saying, Larry, because they're elected, they don't want to prosecute anybody. They don't want to prosecute anybody. And I've seen that happen. And I can tell you, we can tell you in this area, we've had that happen, and crime is out of hand. And that's hurting the people that are victimized. It's also hurting the people that, like I said, the juveniles, when we have no accountability, that's helping that. That's not teaching that kid. No, stealing the car is wrong.
So, go please. Sorry, this is one of my.
Go ahead.
This is one of my buttons, but
I love it. Go for it.
I'm sitting here wringing the ends like, behave yourself. But I think we have a lot of misconception around this.
You can't get out of line with me and Larry here.
Yes, just
Larry's rails are very wide.
being so try to be polite in front of company, right?
Yeah.
But I don't even know where to start. One of the things as I thought about what I've seen on the Daniel Penny case preparing for this podcast is that you saw Democratic, elected officials going to Jordan Neely's funeral and meeting with the family and all this stuff. And I understand the family's frustration. This sits on top of it. We can't look at just this incident. And as a person of color, this goes back to, this sits on all of what I call the Emmett Till moments, right? Times throughout history where Black people can be murdered with impunity and the justice system doesn't do anything about it. So there's a lot of historical, emotional baggage among Black people as it relates to this. I understand the father's frustration. But I haven't heard anybody talk about how Jordan Neely lived.
I don't know.
How did Jordan Neely live? Jordan Neely lived with,
He was homeless.
sounds like he was homeless. He was eating out of dumpsters. He
Mental health.
had been hospitalized for suicidality and other mental health, dating back to his mother was murdered by, I think, a romantic partner and put in a suitcase or some like horrific murder. And I think that there's a tendency to commoditize deaths.
Well, and
without caring about the life that came before that.
Absolutely. Anytime when somebody dies, even if it's, and we're going to talk about justified homicide, right? I mean, there's homicides that are justified, but when somebody dies, it's a tragedy. It's tragic when somebody dies. As a police officer and law enforcement officer, I don't want anybody to die. I don't. As a person, I don't want anybody.
But it happens.
But it does happen,
and we live in situations where crime ebbs and flows in America. We're in a relatively low crime period compared with the 90s in terms of violent crime, right?
Yeah.
Lower than we were then, but it's still an issue. But there is the defund the police thing was a lot of different things all rolled under the worst label in history.
Yeah.
There was part of it was we shouldn't be sending cops to mental health for mental health issues. And I think there's legitimacy to that, but some people took that too far and said we need to get rid of policing.
Right.
Nobody who cares about the community, particularly Black communities, can argue that it's better to get rid of police. So I think there's a lot roll into this, but it all rolls up to that politics aspect.
Right.
And I could, sorry.
Go ahead,
to cut you off. I'm going to say the elephant in the room, money, right? Give you an example. I live out in Troy. We had a young lady, white, who killed 3 of her friends in a car accident. It's had 6 months probation. She violated her probation. They put her back on probation. It's been a wagon wheel, right? Affluence, money. She has money. You have a 17-year-old Black kid who go to jail for much less, right? So I think there's a big, we talk about commoditizing death. I think we commoditize life based off the value, currency value. It's sad when
I agree. I mean, you have more money, you can get a better attorney, and it's a better outcome perhaps in court.
Well, Chris, if I could just leverage that. So even example, there was recently a young white female who did a school shooting. The coverage of her is unlike any other coverage I've seen of a school shooter. It is, she was from a good family. She was just having a hard time. They're not, as of yet that I saw, her parents aren't going to court and being charged with anything. They come from, they have affluence in that town.
Mhm.
I have to go here. Luigi, the United Healthcare, he's getting terrorist charges. He's getting perp walks. He's getting all of these things, right? That one could argue, okay, well, both come from affluent families, both have money, right? But who are the victims of those crimes? One is a CEO who makes 25 million, who probably donates to some political party or whose company does, versus what I consider myself, an average Joe, right? There's not going to be any politicians coming down for me if something happens.
And you're right. There's politics. What we're not saying is whether you're the CEO and you make millions of dollars or you're not, when somebody dies, it's a tragedy. We don't want anybody to die. It's still,
That's not universal truth.
no, but that's what I'm
you,
saying.
not
That's what I'm
everybody.
saying. And
I
that's
think
what
we all agree.
I think all of us agree here.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to make sure that everybody hears. That's what all of us agree here. Whether you're rich or you're poor or you're in between, somebody's murdered, right? And we want to apply that equally, but politics does come into play. And you brought it up with the examples that you gave, where you had somebody who was wealthy, who was white Caucasian, somebody who was poor, who was African American. I could reverse it. If I could have somebody who's African American, who's very rich, and if they have a lot of money, they're going to be able to, like I said, afford a better attorney or whatnot. But even sometimes when you're rich too, Larry, you still there?
I'm here. I don't know what happened to my picture. Is that
Okay.
Mike working on that?
Yeah, we're working on it. But, even if you have somebody that's very wealthy, if they're a political target, there's still going to be some people are still going to go after them. And juries, Larry, back me up on this. You never know what a jury's going to do.
Isn't that the truth?
You just don't know. I mean, you talk to any defense attorney, you talk to any prosecutor, you could get in look, the location of a jury. If I take a jury from New York and a jury from, I don't know, Southern Texas or something like that, do political demographics make a difference? Oh, they shouldn't be in the criminal justice system. But guys,
Yeah.
This is real talk, right, Larry? Can I use that? Real talk?
Absolutely, Chris. Juries are very simple.
Is this a reality? It is a reality. Politics comes into play.
Okay. I want to jump in here just because Larry's camera is dead. Larry, that's on your side as opposed to mine.
Okay, I'll check it out. Okay.
Roger that. Yeah.
And Mike,
you want a break?
actually, it looks better like that, Larry. I'm just saying.
Yeah, your round head is now square with a W on it. That's amazing.
It looks pretty good to me.
Yeah, it looks cool. Yeah.
But before you jump in and start troubleshooting, Larry, I have a question for you about juries.
Mm-hmm.
Related to the Daniel Penny case.
And I'm not an expert on juries, but I'll give you what I know.
I know, and obviously, anybody who's got expertise here, can a trained person be judged by a jury of their peers?
Give me a little more specific.
Anybody trained to use violence responsibly? That could be somebody.
Because talking about himself, to be honest.
That's right. And I'm not going to pretend that I don't have a horse in this race, but if you think about
You have a horse in the race. They do.
if you think about Daniel Penny, he's a Marine,
Right.
And he knows something about violence. Right. One of the things about Americans is that we have this pathological fear of death and also of interpersonal violence. Right. So people just head in the sand when it comes to violence. They pretend it's not going to happen to them and that it's not a reality, and we're not prepared to deal with it. So one of the things that I argue when I teach people to, and I've had the good fortune of having people trust me who are at imminent risk of violence, like, people who protest and social activists and people who have stalkers and things like that.
And police officers.
Right? So I tell them, listen, things can go wrong. And I always start by telling them what can go wrong, right? Even down to, civil suits, if you defend yourself successfully and it results in a serious injury. But can you construct a jury of that person's peers? My argument is no.
Well, first
it's
of all,
difficult.
truthfully, see, most cases are one of voir dire, which is jury selection. Most cases, if you remember back with Mike Tyson, he had terrible representation. He lost to the case with the rape, and then you had William Kennedy Smith in West Palm Beach had the best jury picker in the world, $250,000 just to pick the jury, and he wins the case in Obar, is a place in West Palm Beach. He got accused of taking a girl to the sand and whatever. So now, can you pick a jury? Believe it or not, a good attorney, either side, is going for that. That's why they have selections and how many picks and how many strikes you have and everything else, so they don't just bog it down forever. But you can do that, but you're chancing that whole case on that one person or a couple of people that you want to. In fact, when you're really good at it, you look to see who you think has the personality to be the jury foreman. And then you could start literally talking to that person, because that person, is going to sway a few more people on the jury and when they're in deliberation. So there goes a lot into the jury selection, and that's where most cases are won that I won on appeals are on jury selection and voir dire. There's mistakes made by the judge or the instructions, because the instructions are not set.
Right.
They're given to the judge, and then the judge picks them by both sides. So,
And Larry, it's such an outlier. It's juries are unpredictable, like we said. It's such an outlier it's such a unpredictable situation that's why a lot of times the criminal justice system, prosecutors and that are going to go for some type of plea rather than try to take it up in front of a jury. But like Eric said, yeah, can you really get a jury of your peers that understands everything? That's why they try to bring in expert testimony and expert witnesses and things like that. With
varying results, right?
With varying results.
So one of the things I read in the media was that somebody was advocating that Daniel Penny loosen that hold, which may or may not have been plausible because I wasn't there, but I've been training for 20 years to use leverage against people. And that first inch has 80% of your leverage in it.
Right.
So you may not be letting it, because the whole point of leverage is so you can't use strength against my leverage. I'm going to win. But if I loosen that a little bit, what happens to my leverage? Right now, that's something I've learned.
You lose
through decades of study of using leverage against people. Right. So there's no way you can't cover all your bases with expert testimony. Right. So I that's always one of the things that and it's a little bit of a rhetorical question. And
an understanding of and this goes to, hey, we're here in Missouri. We're located in Missouri. So concealed carry holders know this. You need to know the law. You don't need to just be proficient with the weapon that you go.
Force law.
You need to use the force law. You need to be familiar with what what you can and can't do, what lethal force is and what lethal force isn't.
And the updates, as the updates are what are almost always forgotten inside of the land of concealed carry.
The case law, and our producer Mike, a concealed carry expert. Can I call you a concealed carry expert there, Mike?
Yeah, firearms instructor. Sure,
firearms instructor. So, when people come in and they want to carry a gun, it's not as easy as, hey, I'm just going to go shoot a target. I'm going to know how the gun works and so on and so forth. You need to know all of these things, like what's lethal force. Somebody's life is being threatened, yours or somebody else's life is in imminent danger, then you can utilize lethal force. But you need to know that. You need to know that there's that there's going to be a process afterwards that's going to review everything, and they're going to nitpick everything. And you might be in front of a jury that doesn't have that understanding. That's why they try to educate those juries on this. And so, was Daniel Penny in a case, according to the jury, according to the outcome of the court, Daniel Penny was justified in what he did. It was a lethal force situation. They believed that he was in imminent fear, I guess, of his life or somebody else's life. He utilized force. Does it matter that maybe his intent wasn't to kill the person, but to disable him or stop him or whatever? It doesn't matter. The result was the person died. That's lethal force. And a lot of people don't know this too. When we train in police work, lethal force isn't just death. It's also serious physical injury. So
let me ask you this, Chief.
Yep.
This happened in Missouri on the Metro Link. You think you would have been charged?
We're talking about common sense, right? Based off your demographic, where you're at, we all are concealed carry holders. We understand.
I do not think he would have been charged.
And
Based on what the jury said, and what you're really asking me is it easier to get charges in New York than it is in St. Louis County or in St. Charles, because some of the outlying counties, you get less urban. Yeah, you're not going to get charges. And that plays into politics, producer Mike. Are you in a conservative area or a more progressive area?
1,000%.
Nobody wants to. You talk about the elephant in the room. That's the elephant. Hey, if you're in a more progressive area or you're in a more conservative area, which way is it going to lean? And should it? It shouldn't.
While we're grabbing elephants, while we're wrangling elephants, the other one to remember is that having a discussion in regard to anything, the use of force continuum, is a horrifying element that most people have never even thought of, much less know about.
Right.
It's one of the most sobering pieces of CCW instruction that I have, where I can watch people's eyes increase in about 4 or 5 sizes. Because some of the sobering things that can happen inside of concealed carry use of force continuum is horrifying to people that have never heard things like that before.
Right.
It is. And so if you were to splash damage any of the things that we talk about inside of standard CCW inside of a state like Missouri, inside of a state and a populace inside of New York, well, Larry, I know you know something about firearms, but I think you also would be very, very starkly surprised at many of the things that you would learn.
Oh, there's no question. It's funny. I had a lot of firearms, not legal. Let's leave it at that. That's all past. Statute of limitations are way up. Chris.
Very mollification, Larry. Because I was going to label that as a confession.
What I was going to say is, the older I get, I'm 63 years old, and I don't want a gun. I could care less if I had a gun. I think it's more trouble than it's worth. Listen, if you could beat me, you could beat me. I'll take an ass beating. Anybody who says they never had their ass beaten just never fought the right guy. Believe me, I've been around professional fighters. I fought in a ring myself, and I don't give a shit who you are. You will get your ass kicked. And obviously, the experts in martial arts will tell you that.
I'll co-sign on that later.
I would assume, and I look at it like, okay, throw me a beating. I'm not saying there's not ideal situations, guys, where, you got a guy in a movie theater. I'd love to. I'm a nut that I'd sit on the edge anyway without a gun just to tackle the guy. That's just how I am. But I really feel for the guy with this situation. One, because asking professionals like with martial arts, it's such a great discipline. I have a lot of friends in it, and it teaches calm when most people are out of whack. Number one, I'm going off instincts, adrenaline, what I know from my infant to he's going off of calculations, training. Like you said, 80%. I mean, I'm just listening to that boggles my mind. He's real right. I mean, I know it's for wrestling, and leverage is everything. I'm a strong guy, but I can get a little guy to get me, and he gets me in the right position. I don't care how strong I am. Yeah.
Circling back, when like we've talked about the fallout of this case, they labeled this Daniel Penny effect. So we had a person who I guess was on the subway, apparently was burned to death, horrific thing, while people watched, and they
burned alive, Chris.
Burned alive horrifically, and people watched, and they didn't intervene, and frankly they're afraid of repercussions. They're afraid to get criminally charged, and then we haven't even talked about the civil fallout to that. So as a society, I hate to see that. I want people to step up and do the right thing, but just like Eric said, hey, he's afraid to step in.
But Chris, but there is the Good Samaritan law. You know that, right, Chris?
There is the Good Samaritan law, but I'm telling you, Larry, that when you take that from top to bottom, like Eric says, the court of public opinion, are they going to ruin his life? Are they going to civil suit? Yeah, that's the other thing, civil suit. And I just don't. You know what? I think if you step up and you try to save somebody's life, and you're justified in this, there are justified homicides. I don't like when anybody dies. I don't. But if you're justified, I don't agree with you being now prone to a civil suit necessarily. Now, I will say this, that the burden of proof is a lot different to convict you of a criminal charge than a civil charge. And sometimes there is, you get off on some technicality on the criminal charge, and there should be some repercussions civilly with litigation. But when it's justified, when it's just clearly a justifiable,
Well, Chris,
you know,
nothing clearly.
act.
That's what the courts will tell you. Nothing
No.
clear.
But I mean, it's just you being in a civil suit. It almost seems like it's 100% that you're going to have that civil suit cast against you, even though you're 100% right. You know,
And you know why I don't like lawyers. As much as I have a law degree on my
so wait, he doesn't like cops and he doesn't like lawyers. A friend of mine who's a lawyer is going to come on this show and we're going to talk civilly.
Hey, listen, most of my friends are either lawyers, judges, cops,
Giving you the trouble.
and gangsters. Because there's such a fine line. Let's face that now.
Sure.
And Chris, you are different, so let's leave that out
I'm
of it.
different.
I mean,
He's
you're
way
different. And you're
You're
different.
different. All right.
Because Chris, I know your heart.
Right.
I know where you care. I know it. Now, don't get me wrong. I think a lot of police chiefs, listen, I could go on and on about what they could do better to make us feel more accepted. And I'm a big believer, and you know this, Chris,
Mhm.
community policing and connecting to the community starts with law enforcement, not the community. Has to start. See, law
Yeah,
enforcement
I agree.
is the only
Starts with law
profession.
enforcement.
Law enforcement is the only profession that change comes from the top down. Doesn't come from the bottom. You don't have a grass well. If the police chief is a positive, community-minded, and you know how I'm about this with Mike and at the last police, if you guys knew Mike Force, he is very community-oriented, and he gave an award out. This is how I ended up becoming very close with this police department. He gave an award out for a police officer he saw that didn't see him changing a person's flat.
Sure.
He didn't give out an award for most DUIs, most arrests, because he said to me, Larry, if I did that, I would have my officers wanting to arrest more people to win that award. And inevitably, they would have bad arrests. So why do that? Give a guy an award for who speaks at the most churches. Give out another award who does positive things for the community. Maybe helps with Little League. Give out awards to incentivize. Let's face it. Original cops, starting cops are 25, 26. They're still kids. They're young. They're impressionable. They go for their leader. And that's why with the Derek Chauvin case, I didn't believe in the cop that was on for 2 days going to jail. He's
Right.
way too impressionable. Now, Derek Chauvin, I'm the only one on the internet, the whole internet, that called the exact time the judge gave him. And I did a lot of research on that before he did it. And it's proven because the day before my video came out, I said exactly how long he'd get, 23 years. And that next day, he got 23 years.
Yeah.
And I actually was giving a trip away to anybody who had it. I won my own trip.
You won your own trip. And where did you send yourself, Larry?
I sent myself to my bedroom.
All right, that's good. That's not a trip that everyone wants to take, Larry. I'm just saying it.
But he's speaking to culture though.
Yes,
Right? Every system scriptly
100%.
but is perfectly designed to achieve the results.
he is, but there's another point in this that I want to make too, though, Larry. When he brought up the Derek Chauvin case, here's what I saw. The prosecutor, the district attorney, and the prosecutor in that case didn't seem like he was overcharging the main suspect. It didn't seem like it. And I remember him saying something like, hey, I've done this before, been through this before. No, we're not going to, because I think there were people going first degree murder, and what he's saying is the elements of the case fit this crime. And that's what I'm going to charge. And he wasn't pressured. It didn't seem like he was pressured to push that.
I didn't say him. I didn't say Derek Chauvin. I'm talking about there were three.
I was talking to the district attorney. No, I agree with you on the cop. I don't know how they got that charge. That might have been public opinion. That might have been political pressure. That might have been pressure from the outside. But yeah, as far as the brand new guy that's on there, if he's going to go intervene and stop everybody from doing that, and then to criminally charge him on that, I thought that was. I agree with you. I thought that was a stretch. I don't know how they got that charge, but when they charged Chauvin, I think the prosecutor actually picked the right charge, didn't try to stack it and overcharge it. I could be wrong, just based on the outcome. That's why I say that. But And then I look at some of these other cases, these high profile cases that don't fly, that there might be a criminal charge in there. Or there might not. It might have been justified, like this Daniel Penny case. Apparently, according to the jury in that, it's justified. Why were charges brought about then? Was it because of politics, like Brandon said? And that's what we got to get away from. It's ruining the system.
And I'm ruminating on this idea of it being the Daniel Penny effect.
Yeah, is it?
It's not the Daniel Penny effect. It's the bystander effect. Like we've known about the bystander effect for a million years.
The Daniel writing case just
It
just
happens
inflates it.
all, but we're attributing that behavior, which is something that's baked into human beings, especially untrained people. People could be standing by because they don't know what to do. They're not trained. They're not prepared. They don't know how to deal with adrenal stress. They freeze, right? It's a terrifying situation. That's just normal human programming. It just so happens that temporarily this is related, right? So it comes at a time when I can get an article out about the Daniel Penny.
But we're also not talking about what is the appropriate level of intervention and what does that look like. So again, and I wasn't there. I wasn't there for the Daniel Penny. I wasn't there for the Chauvin case. But from what we understand, again, I walk outside, someone screaming, "I'm going to punch you. I'm going to, do all this stuff to you." Well, you go down to North St. Louis, you'll see that all day driving.
Yeah.
Does that mean I pull over and start intervening? No.
No.
I feel like we as a culture, society, whatever that looks like from a bird's eye view, need to have that conversation. Because I could say to you all day, "I'm going to punch you in the face. I'm going to punch." But if you come up and shoot me, guess what? You're going to jail, no matter what I said, right? So then you look at this in a macro, not a micro. And I think that's part of, where we struggle as a society, because we don't have a agreed upon range of intervention, at least in my opinion.
And I don't know that we ever can. And
Well, and you're right. If the 4 of us, 5 of us, 6 of us are in the subway and somebody is beating somebody, I've got to step in, right? I've got to step in, or even the court of public opinion is all over me, right?
Mhm.
If I don't step in, and when I step in, because here's the concern: it's criminal charges, right? That's why, as a law enforcement officer, I know the law. I know use of force. We study it over and over and over again. But I'm stepping in to break that up. I also am cognizant of civil law, but frivolous civil lawsuits have deterred the public from stepping in. Would you agree with that, Larry?
That's a great point. In the court system, you can only file so many frivolous suits before they ban you from even filing, believe it or not. So, excuse me. So I do agree, but I don't know if the normal person, even myself, Chris, would think that deep at that moment. I think
That
adrenaline-
goes to your personality, though, Larry. And I'm saying this all kidding aside. Larry's got a big heart. If Larry sees somebody in trouble, and Larry's got a lot, right, to risk. Convicted felon, right, Larry? I mean, you got to walk it straight and narrow. Larry steps in. He's still going to step in and help him because it's the right thing to do. Larry, I know, is like me. He centers himself on faith. That's how he identifies himself. That's how I I'll tell you what, you want to know more about that? Head over to copsandrobberstalk.com and watch our faith episode. You really want to know some personal things about Larry Lawton? Head over there. It was a great episode. There's some personal things you don't want to know about Larry Lawton. I'm just going to say that right off the bat. But the faith, it was real. It was a good episode. Go check that out. Anyway, back to it, Larry. Those frivolous lawsuits. This is where me and him are going to get into the debate. Do you know what keeps police officers out of frivolous lawsuits? Qualified immunity. That's
which
what
I
me and
don't
Larry,
have.
which you don't have.
And he doesn't have.
And if you did have it, I'm throwing this out there. If you did have qualified immunity that said, "Hey, you're not going to get in a frivolous lawsuit," it's a deterrent for attorneys to try to sue you. Would you be more apt to step in and help that person? Is that civil thing? Is that what's really holding you back? It won't hold Larry back because Larry goes after doing the right thing.
I'll give you a real answer. So I naturally am someone who would try to help, interject, things like that.
Right.
I think there is a word to use, appearance issues. So example,
Mhm.
you come outside and for whatever, most people, right? You come outside and you see a black male and a white female, but or whatever it may be, right? That dynamic there, that automatically looks bad for me. I'm just, that's something I'm very hyper aware of. That
Okay.
looks bad for me. I could be in the right, but you as a bystander or a police officer or anybody who comes upon this scene, there's also an appearance that I think from the start
Mhm.
gives people a predisposition to what the story may be.
People
Right.
tell a story running in their head even
Before they know the facts. And that's something I'm very cognizant of. I actually made a joke. My daughter's volleyball last night. One of the girls needed something, and I went to the parents. I was like, you go do that. I'm not going to go with this young white girl back here. Like, that looks bad, right? I wasn't doing anything wrong. I've known this kid for years.
Yeah.
But there's an appearance issue. And so I do wonder some of this, you hear the white knight theory, right? I wonder how much of that, not only whether it's Penny, but even as I look at situations that unfold, that sits in my head. That probably just as much as what legally the ramifications are. Those are the things that my
And it's culture too. So I mean, in the Daniel Penny case, I probably shouldn't ask this question, Larry, but I guess I should ask it. In the Daniel Penny case, did race come into play in the case? Did race come into play? Here's what I'm saying: if Jordan Neely if he was white Caucasian, is it different? I don't know.
Yes. The story's told different.
The story's told differently.
Okay.
The media coverage is different because
Poor guy.
they know what's. So I'm going to co-sign everything Brandon said.
But does he get charged? Does Penny get charged?
Great question.
That is
Larry,
I think it's plausible.
but the story's told much different. Oh, poor guy was down on his luck, had just lost his job a year ago. The things that we're not hearing about the victim in that.
and this is stuff that I don't know. This is perspective. This is why we're having the Building Bridges podcast. Right.
We're in such a litigious society.
Right.
You're going to find people who want to sue or
Right.
or get it. See, when you get arrested, that's one notch you already won. Like, just like a car accident, the person hits you. I often tell people when you're driving a car, you go over that white line. I said, don't do that. Because even if the car hits you, you're over that line. It might be in 10%, 12%, 20%
Right.
at fault.
Right.
You're behind the line. It's such a litigious society that they're going to look to sue you, whether it's leak or not. See, the standards come with cops and with people is deliberate indifference. See, I won my cases in court against the BOP, and I won a couple of big ones because I proved what they call deliberate indifference, and that will take your qualified immunity away. We'll talk about that in another.
Well, and those other things too, Larry. They'll take your. First of all, you can't commit a crime. It doesn't protect you from criminal acts. It doesn't protect you from violating the Constitution. You can't violate somebody's constitutional rights. Qualified immunity will not protect you with that. But you're right. Later episode, because I need a long runway with this.
Oh, we do. We have a good one on that, Chris. You know that.
Invite me back for that one.
All right. Yeah.
Love to hear your thoughts.
Well, I think there's a lot of serious.
Excuse me, guys. I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. I co-signed everything Brandon said, but the other thing I would add to that, going back to your question about would having qualified immunity change the math? Yeah, I think one of the mistakes people make when they talk about and things that everybody in this group is keenly aware of is that the breadth and depth of possible self-defense situations you can encounter is huge. It's immense, right? So if I see qualified immunity or not, if I see a man arguing with his wife and like getting in her face or maybe shoving her up against the car and yelling versus him hitting her versus him stabbing her.
Right.
It's sort of totally different. And my inclination to intervene will be different depending on what's happening, where I am, who's around, what it will look like.
Absolutely.
So all of those things are in play. But there's a guy, I teach my self-defense students this, and self-defense, martial arts, defensive tactics, 3 totally distinct things that are related, right? And people make that misunderstanding. But there's a guy named Varg Freeborn, who's got a little bit in common with Larry, right? Like he grew up rough, right? Running with gangs. Some guys who's dating a woman, and some of her ex and a bunch of his friends tried to kidnap him and throw him in the trunk of a car. Stabbed him 26 times. He wrote a book about this. Ended up doing hard time. Guy lived, by some miracle, right? 26 stab wounds. He lived. He goes to prison for a long period of time, and now he's out and he teaches edge weapons and a lot of the same kind of stuff that we teach. And he just like Larry, he's out here advocating for, come on guys, don't do that. Right. And here are the consequences. But he's seen both sides of it a lot, like Larry has, right? And that's why your perspective is so valuable, because you've seen both sides of this. Like, and really speak intelligently on there. There's not a whole lot of people that can. Right. But his thing when it comes to self-defense is, what's your mission? Right. That's the first question, right? So, and I think a lot of people are coming at the mission is just get home. So as I teach a lot of my self-defense students, knowing your mission is arguably the most important thing, because if you're not trained, you're exposing yourself to all these risks without qualified immunity, right?
Right.
And particularly if you're not trained, the odds of you losing or you winning and something going wrong,
Right.
like what happened to Daniel Penny, is much higher. Obviously, he was trained, right? He's a Marine,
Right.
but you know, that's the point that I took away. That's the thing I took away from that book, and that I teach to my self-defense students, is that know what you're in here for, and where and when you need to intervene or are willing to intervene.
Right. Absolutely. And same with us. You know, I couldn't stress to you the amount of training that we have to take, that we have to take to know these things. And that's why I'm saying to concealed carry holders, people that are going to protect themselves, that are going to carry a weapon, you have to train. I mean, the law doesn't require you to train, right, Mike? I think there's a original qualification that you have to do. You got to go through a course and so on and so forth.
No, you don't. You have to be of age. You have to walk in. You have to purchase the handgun. You take it home. You load bullets, and now bang bang.
Well, that's
I hate telling you that.
we're a constitutional carry state. But when concealed carry, not every state's constitutional carry, concealed carry, but there is talks about bringing a concealed carry nationwide. And what I'm trying to prepare people for is, you have to train. I mean, to protect yourself, to protect your loved ones, you have to train over and over and over again. You need to know these laws. You need to know use of force. You need to know case law. You need to know about the psychological and emotional effects of pointing a handgun at somebody or being in a shooting situation. That's big.
You need to know the dynamics of a fight, so that you know when you can get to it. People think that they treat a gun as an avatar for being able to protect yourself.
Right.
And it's you have the ability to use deadly force, where most people don't. But you can't, and we've run drills and things like that in our training. Like, you cannot, and I do this in some of my classes, right? Like, holster a firearm and get to it when I'm from this far.
Absolutely. You're not going to beat a knife. Me taking a couple of years with Aaron and the guys at the martial arts studio, I tell you what, you're not going to beat a knife. I mean, you're trying to get a gun out. You know, it's just, you need to be in those situations, and people aren't used to being in violent situations. Most people are not. The people
Actively avoid it.
The people we have here, Larry, you've been in some violent situations.
You think it's bad enough? It's bad enough that our police aren't trained enough. Now, you could debate that anywhere you go to Switzerland and Germany, and it's 3-year academies, Chris. 3. I looked.
Yeah, we've never had a lot of stuff, but yep.
My point is 3 years. Now, again, you're right. Now we're going to ask civilians to buy a gun and then retrain. It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. I agree with you, Larry.
It's just, we're at a point where I'm hoping, again, I'll bring things back to common sense.
Right.
Listen, if I'm in my house in a bed and I hear a breaking window coming in, I pick up a gun. That's a good move, you know. But I'll tell you a situation that happened to me. Do you guys know what swatting is?
Yep.
I had my house swatted at 1:40 in the morning.
Yeah.
They came through here. I mean, had lasers all over me, out, and I freaked. And I talked to my lawyers, talked to the chief I know very well, and Larry, I said, don't apologize. You did everything right. Which, what happens is, it's just for your safety, because they said I was being held hostage for money, and they got the other person. They knocked me out, and I got the whole transcripts. I have everything.
Yep.
Even the verbal, the thing. And how do you train for that?
Yeah.
That's a nightmare.
You don't.
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough. Listen, when I walked out my house, I heard Larry Lawton. I'm thinking my computer's on, whatever. 1:40, I'm putting together a glass bar I had in the office.
Right.
I opened the door, don't shoot, and lasers, and I had a phone in my hand.
Right.
I had my phone in my
Right.
hand. And I'm thinking, could you imagine Larry Lawton, ex-con, comes out. We thought he was, they look him up. They don't know who he is. They know he's a violent offender.
Right.
Though he's my record, Chris. All of a sudden, I come out, one starts shooting. I'm Swiss cheese. And then that's a justifiable shooting to them. I mean, in their own right. Obviously, I talked to the chief. Now I'm on a list. They call it, I guess you go on a list after, like, even I was told.
If you victim, yeah.
Well, if I was told if I move,
Right.
go to the local police, tell them who you are, because this can happen. It happens to influencers a lot. And so then they at least know, at least somebody maybe on the watch or the command. I mean, the commanders know me. The police chief come flying down the street at 1:45 in the morning. Get him out of those cuffs. Get him out of those. Knowing that what happened. And I wasn't trained for that. And I'll tell you the truth. I'm yelling and screaming. I'm the only nut who gets lasers all over. I'm still screaming and not freaking shaking. I'm going nuts. And I look back and I said, no training, nothing. I should have, I could have been dead.
And exactly. And you know what? That's goes to the point. People, because I remember a time when people were down on SWAT teams and tactical teams. I'm going to say this, and this is my experiences. I always caveat it with my experiences, because we have a tactical team that's in our area, that's in our region, that's probably one of the best TAC teams in the state. There's some other very good tactical teams. They save lives. And the reason they save lives is, Larry, you want to talk about training? They train over and over and over again. And you know what? They're going to recognize that cell phone in your hand. And if it's not a cell phone in your hand and, it's somebody that's threatening the police, they're going to shoot. They're not going to miss. They're going to do what they need to do. But they've saved lives. I've called them in to situations where I know if my guys go in without the tactical team, we don't have the resources in that. We're going to go in. We're going to get in a shooting. We're probably going to kill this person. And, I've said, that no, we're going to call the TAC team out. The TAC team can de-escalate, gas, whatever they need, throw gas in there. They can breach the doors. They can do it a lot safer. And it has saved people's lives. That's why, but it goes back to what we're talking about, training. And that's what we need.
Well, Chief, I want to circle into what you guys were talking about with the penny effect, right?
Yes, I'm going to circle back to that too. Absolutely.
As I have a conceal and carry, as I consider myself just a normal Joe, citizen, civilian.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about the penny effect, and I've always been taught, whether it's from my conceal and carry classes, from my time in the Marines, and just who I am, I don't interject myself into a situation unless I need to be in that situation.
Right. Correct.
So especially as a conceal and carry holder, i.e. someone's fighting outside, whatever the situation may be, I don't interject unless I truly feel like I need to. Something you said, it really hit home with me of, from here to here, I'm not drawing on you, right? This is a physical hand-to-hand fight. I think a lot of people, and what we may be seeing as the penny effect, I think is some of that common sense that we were referring to at the beginning of the show of, if I see you screaming at him on a subway and you're ready to fight him, I'm not going to be this close to you, right? Because if something does happen, if I do need to escalate force, I need space to determine what the best course of action is, to move into the best positioning, whatever it may be, right? Maybe move my family out the way, move a bystander. So, you were touching on earlier, you were kind of asking, hey, is this a unintended consequence of this entire process? And I would say yes, but, and again, the lady who was burned, that's nothing to do with her, right? I do think that there is some positivity of people are rethinking what that threshold is, because again, let's just say,
especially in that area,
and let's just say he was screaming on the subway, and then everyone got off.
Right.
That happens every day, right? Every day.
Daniel Penny situation, I would have left at the first opportunity.
And then just go.
And on a subway, you're stuck on the train, so on and so forth. I get it. It goes to a bigger problem. This is a problem we see in law enforcement with mental health. People say, do you guys need help with mental health resources? Absolutely, we do. We've had, and I go back to it. I know people don't like to hear this, but when we had mental health institutions, we had places, and some of them were not good. They weren't. And they've closed, they closed some of them. There's abuses, all that kind of stuff. Larry can tell you about, prison system, right? Sometimes, Larry, the prison system isn't perfect, right? There's problems.
It's a mental health institution, really. What
Right.
it is.
And mental health. But I can tell you that everything has a cause and effect. And when mental health decided, well, we're not going to have institutions, some people really can't exist in society. They do need help. But it was kind of pushed back on society. Well, who's going to deal with this? I got to tell you guys, law enforcement has been, I would say 70% of our problems are addiction and mental health. If addiction, I can tell you that we don't have a big homicide rate, a murder rate out where I police 3 or 4 murders over the course of 30 something years. They're all connected to mental health or addiction, or both, right? It's always drugs. It's always some mental health issue. And we're seeing this more and more and more in society. Larry, when you were in high school, were you ever afraid of an active shooter coming in and killing your entire classroom? Did you have that fear?
Never heard of it, Chris.
Never heard of it. Never heard of
Now
it.
that could be, let's face fact, that could be because the media, obviously today's media compared to back when I was at, we didn't even have cable TV, no ESPN, none of this. You can go on and on, all of us here. So, I mean, beepers were a big deal. And then, so now everything hits of a button. I could pick this up and find out anything I want.
Right.
About what I want.
So in certain states, they're having mental health workers go out with it. I don't know, it's California, New York, some of those places they're having. Would that be something you would like to, and Larry?
Well,
you guys like
they
to
do.
see?
No, I mean, we already do that. So we have programs that do where we work with mental health closely. We have all the police officers are trained, like all in our area, every one of them's trained in crisis intervention, which is mental health training. And that's continuing to catch on. But we're not mental health professionals. It's just like teachers. Teachers go, hey, I'm not a parent. I'm not supposed to be parenting your kids. I'm supposed to be teaching your kids. I understand. I empathize with that, right? This is the job that I've taken. Well, a teacher's not supposed to have to defend themselves, right? In schools necessarily. They weren't put in that position because they're going to have to, take on an active shooter. Well, now all of a sudden, we're training. It's the same thing in law enforcement where we continue to have different things. I mean, it's just the way the world changes, the society changes. We have to adapt. Mental health is a huge portion of that. Drugs have always been a portion, right? Drugs have always been a problem.
But this is not a policing problem.
It's a societal problem.
It's a societal problem.
I agree.
And, I think we're pulling at this thread from different angles. You
Right.
talked about the juvenile problem.
Right.
It's
a societal problem too.
Larry, you had mentioned some things around it. And it's like, what do we want in this? And we started with the Daniel Penny case, and the framework of it is like, what do we want as a society? Do we want to create a place where people intervene in potentially violent situations? Do we want the reason that kid reoffends when they go back home after they leave juvie is because they're coming from a place that's not tenable?
Well, they don't.
We talked about it. When people
nobody
get out, they
right.
go back into the same waters, right? And then the same situational forces are at work on that person. And what do you expect them to do? They're back in the same circumstances they started in.
Right.
So we, as a society, we're not really helping people, right? So do we want police to send police to mental health issues?
Or send a worker with the police.
But police cannot compensate for our failures in society.
Let's address these. But let's face it, what society does we don't want to deal with that problem. We're going to push that.
We don't have
pharmacists. We're going to push that on the ex-cons. We're going to have the ex-cons take care of that. We're going to push it on the police. We're going to push it on the teachers. Society doesn't. I don't really want to see that. I really don't want to deal with it.
Out of sight, out of mind. Sure.
Right? It's out of sight, out of mind. But what we need is what Larry said in the beginning, common sense. We need common sense. We need common sense solutions.
But we need it at all levels.
We need it at all levels. And that's going to be hard.
Common sense ain't so common.
It's not so common. So anyway, from that, as far as we, in our area, especially around here, they call it the Daniel Penny effect. We had what was called the Ferguson effect, right? Because we're near Ferguson. We had all that. It's been 10 years. And people ask me, because the Ferguson effect was basically, did that create a mindset among law enforcement to where law enforcement just stopped policing. And there's been speculation all over the place. There's political pieces where people weigh in on it. I can tell you from being in law enforcement, my perspective is yes, it did. It did. Police got to the point where they just stopped. They said, okay, what do you want? We're just not going to do. We're going to be reactive. We're going to do reactive policing. We get a call, we go. We don't get a call, we don't go. That's not community policing. I can tell you that doesn't work. Reactive policing doesn't work. Over-aggressive policing doesn't work. Like I've said in the beginning, you got to be
Chris,
assertive.
just to maybe to end on a Daniel effect is, I don't know, policing to me should be, if I have a neighbor who's a police officer and my kid is acting out, I ask that cop to come over, help my kid. He goes in the bedroom and he finds, I don't care, marijuana pipes, whatever. He shouldn't be arrested.
No.
You're trying to be proactive as a parent. You see cops say, listen, I saw it. I really can't do anything. If they know that, I know that's there. And before you know it, the poor kid. Then you know what happens? The community says, I ain't calling the cops. Try to help my kid. And my kid's now in jail with a wreck and he's 98 ball.
And I've had people call. We've had situations like that. We've had people call and go, hey, I found some drugs in my kid's room. What do I do? Do I go? Take them. So no, in all seriousness, you need to take the drugs away from the kid, right? You need to call the police. You need to be able to trust your police department. No, I'm not going to come up here and try to, make some criminal case. You're trying to help your kid. That's what I want too. That's community policing. I want to help them. But what I'm saying is, if your kid is going out and stealing a car every night, and I'm bringing him back to you, and you don't care, and he goes out and steals a car, he or she goes out and steals another car, it's continuous. I'm hurting your kid. You're hurting your kid.
The system is
hurting the kid. It is not helping, because if that kid starts at 14 and does that until 18, they will be in prison.
But let's put the blame where it lies. The blame's on the
Right, and it's me.
Well, the blame is on the system, but there's also accountability with the parents. There's also accountability with others too.
But human beings are complicated, and they are this moment, right? So the systems are there because human beings are fallible, right? So if the system is failing, we can't excuse that, and that's always been. And obviously we're all extremely pro police here, but that's been my criticism.
Take that back, Eric.
Okay. All right. Most of us are. Okay, we are pro police. How about regular pro police?
Completely wrong. Extremely. Regular pro police. We're going to ruin Larry's reputation.
Okay, yeah. Sorry. Apologies, Larry. We are pro. We're here because we're pro law enforcement, and we want to see the problem.
And Larry is pro law enforcement. He's pro good law.
And as we all are, but the problem is is the continual cover up of systematic failure. Right. That's the problem. So the juvenile system is failing this person, because if they had parents, who are going to be what we expect them to be, then they wouldn't be stealing cars.
Well, and I'm going to say the asshole thing. I am. And Chief, I have nothing but the utmost respect for you.
Sure.
But to piggyback on what you said, I think that I struggle when I hear things like the Ferguson effect, the Penny effect, because we have teachers who are doing it with nothing, their own money. We have my wife is a charge nurse in the EMS or in the hospital. They get by barely. They're struggling with staff and around instead of 7, and they're literally saving lives. Like when we talk about, in the macro of everything, they're saving lives, just like police officers are, whether saving, taking rights. They kind of have a parallel authority, or at least a parallel purpose, right? So I struggle sometimes when I hear, the Ferguson effect, the Penny effect, and as an average Joe, because I'm like, well, why teachers can do it? Why is that it's an excuse? Yeah, and I'm not saying you are.
I agree. That doesn't mean that good people won't step up and do the right thing just because there's an effect. It doesn't mean that that your wife's not going to step up and do the right thing. It doesn't mean the police officers didn't step up and do the right thing. What I'm saying, as a system, when you have that effect, it does affect the entire system. It drives, because that all the things that we don't want to talk about, politics and public opinion and all that, drive the direction that we're going. And it's always a pendulum. It always swings one way and then it swings back.
Which is why the system fails.
And
So if the system's not serving officers and it's not serving the community, who's it serving?
it's not community policing.
Well, you'd put it everything now.
So
It's so themselves. Obviously, it's jobs, it's promotions and money, and guys want to get out. They do their 20. They do whatever they're going to try to do.
Well,
It's hard, Chris. Obviously, we all know right here there's people who do the right thing, like you said.
Yeah.
But that when we're talking about systematic failures, was what Eric was talking about, 100%. And also, Dan, right? Is it
Brandon.
Call me on a good day.
And what Brandon was about is he's right. What Brandon was talking, it's a systematic, and when you start naming, giving an excuse for it, that was just the the Ferguson.
well, I don't know that it's an excuse, because let me criticize. As far as my profession goes, you took an oath. You're supposed to go out there and police. You need to do your job. I'll say that, and I'll have 100 million cops that I know of that will say that too. But there is a frustration. I guarantee that the teacher or the ER nurse, I guarantee sometimes they throw up their hands and go, "What do you want me to do, society? What do you want me to do, public?" Police officers, same way. Hey, what do you want? Do you just want us not to do anything? But we're going to defund you. Okay. Right. So that's all the narrative
Thing though. It's not the officer's thing. It's the leadership's question.
It's right. And leadership needs to step up. And I can tell you, it has swung back where we said, no, we need to police. We need to, but I'm telling you, not in the area I police. Major urban areas, there's still a sentiment of just be reactive. It's not working. You got to be centered. You got to be proactive. You got to be engaged with the community. And I think that police officers want to do that. They want to be engaged with the community.
Sure.
But there's also a negative side to where I say negative. We also have to arrest people. We do. We have to make arrests.
Some of that proactivity though does you a disservice. So I think of stop and frisk in New York. You're being and I'm just, and I know you're not in New York. I know.
Well, it
but
depends on what
hey, don't get me on this one. But
so immediately,
I would frisk Larry every time I see him. I'm just saying that right off the bat. So you will find out.
I want to frisk Larry right now.
All right, we won't go there because he'll start talking about some other things. Anyway, but as far as being proactive, what I'm saying is engaging with the community, communicating with the community, being proactive on community policing and such. As far as stop and frisk goes, there's always been, and Al, we can get into this will take a whole nother episode, but as far as Terry stops go, Terry versus Ohio, pat downs, there's always been that judgment that's been in place, the Supreme Court ruling, so on and so forth. It was Supreme Court ruling, wasn't it, Larry?
yes,
Terry versus Ohio.
Yep.
So
100%.
as far as pat down for weapons for safety, to my knowledge, that's still in place. Just running around patting everybody down for everything. No, you can't. That was never a thing. So it depends on, when we put things in place, do they go too far overboard? Do we have to, kind of check ourselves? We have checks and balances. Did it lower crime, Larry?
Well, actually, no, it didn't. That's why I say, hold on. But Chris, see what you're talking about, Chris, is so true. But I mean, when you get a young officer, who just does stupid shit, whatever it is. Listen, I tell everybody, if you have 100 employees, one is going to be a fuck up. I don't care who you. I don't care what agency where you're at.
Well, when you're younger, you make mistakes too. I did it.
But again, Chris, your mistakes, and I say you as police, are so much more consequence bound than I make a mistake.
I realize
you got a gun and a badge, and my liberty and my life is at stake.
Right.
When I fight you, you might get beat up, or I might get beat up, whatever's gonna happen.
Right.
For the most part. So I often say that we have to, and it's not just training. I'm a big believer in the two-system con.
Yeah.
You see small departments like yourself, Chris. They'll get a guy who's 23, passes his academy, whatever the bullshit he does.
Yeah.
He's in a car alone. In New York, they put a guy who's been on the job for 20 years, 10 years, 15 years, and he's riding along with that kid.
Yeah, we do too. Well, for field training, sure.
But for how long?
As long as it takes. But here's the thing: once they get off of field training, there's still a new police officer, there's still oversight, there's still mentoring, there's still
Probationary
coaching.
period.
And you know what? You know how long you get mentored? For the rest of your career. So I mean, I'm at the top, right? I'd say I'm at the top. I'm the chief. So I still get mentored. I still get coached. I still learn. You know what? And it's not always from the top down, Larry. Sometimes I get coached from the bottom up, but I've got to be open to that and learn from that.
No,
But your department has a culture that is the culture in the department is such that mentoring is positive. And that goes back to the system argument, right?
Yeah. So anyway, since this episode is so long, we're gonna jump to final thoughts here. Let's go around the room. Final thoughts. Daniel Penny case. Appreciate everybody being here. Brandon, what do you got?
Damned if you do, damned if you don't. You know,
Tough, isn't it?
I would never. I hope to not be in that situation. But I do think, you know, the light at the end of the tunnel. There are things we can glean from this.
Yeah.
Whether it be personally, society, you know, as a society, and then also want to just say, I think you do a great job. Like, genuinely, we've talked about it, but I think you do a great job. And I really, the way that you approach policing within your department, I do feel that's why they say you're different. I feel there's a uniqueness, right? There's an openness, just like this.
I'm going to prove to you guys that I'm not, but yes. Okay.
So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Appreciate it.
These are tough questions to field. We're going to beat you down a little bit, but
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
No, and like I said, so final thoughts. I'm calling it. I think Brandon Marine does the right thing. He's on the subway. He does something. I don't know what you do. I do think you intervene. I think you get there. You do something because you can't let people get hurt. You can't let people get hurt. Maybe, who knows how that pans out. Martial arts expert, Eric Alexander. What do you think? Final thoughts.
I feel like we've almost oversimplified this.
Sure.
Because
we got to,
and we've done I think we've gone out of our way to not, but it's such a broad and complicated
It is.
topic. And I think it ultimately boils down to the balance between having a society where people help one another or vigilantism. And it's kind of like when you move that slider, you're going to get some unintended consequences in both directions. Right. So I think it's an idea of figuring out where that sweet spot is.
you got to watch that slippery slope, right? I mean, it's tough.
Well, I mean, and I've had these conversations with you and text messages and things, but like when things happen related to police, particularly, that relate to race, I'll be like, oh, here we go again, right? So
Eric will text me, and I'll go, okay, let's talk about it.
And he'll say,
I never escalate.
but the issue is, as a Black person, I'm like, I can see
Yeah.
all of the history and be like, oh, here we go again. They just kill us whenever they want to, and nothing ever gets done about it.
Right. And
That's fair and valid. But on the other hand, if I was Daniel Penny, do I want 12 people 12 people who are totally untrained, who don't know what I know, armchair quarterbacking my good faith effort to protect my fellow citizens?
Yeah.
No, I don't want that either. And if people in that jury or the prosecutor or even the family member, before this had ever happened, if Mr. Neely's family, if we would have asked them if he was on the train by himself and somebody was threatening, would you want somebody to stand up and intervene? They'd probably say yes.
Yeah.
And when police are 10 minutes away.
Right.
So it's a really complicated conversation, and these are the tough things. And I think we have a lot more to talk about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Larry Lawton, you're on the subway. This happens in front of you. And this is tough. And I mean, I'm being serious about this. You're convicted felon, man. You got to be careful, right? What do you do, man?
It's funny, Chris. I think it happens more than we know. It just you don't get the consequences that happen. You don't get the trial. You don't get the thing right out in the news. You don't get somebody who died right there from the choke. We had a few with the cops, with Eric Gardner and a couple others. And I think that's all just about training and stuff. As far as myself, I mean, I'm always going to intervene, whether I'm wrong or right. I'm just going to I lay that on the line. Say, listen, what are you going to do to me? Put me back in prison? Go ahead. But I just think that police should take a lot from this situation and understand how the public feels, because now that average guy who watched this whole case in New York City and it was on the papers every day is saying, man, I ain't going to get involved, man. Freak that shit. I don't need this crap. I mean, I don't know that person. It happens to someone down the street and I didn't know it. and you can't save the world. I've learned that, but me inside of me is just gonna I can't stand people who pick on elderly or pick on children.
I agree.
Pick on me, pick on someone who's gonna fight back.
We have that in common.
So I just think, and I think the results of the case is very important. That he was found not guilty totally.
Right.
From what we know, obviously we weren't in the jury room or anything, but he was found not guilty, and that I think is a big boost for society to help. If he was convicted of anything, it would have been a disaster in my mind.
Right. And then, so the criminal justice system worked maybe in this
I think
situation.
it did. I think it did
And,
as much as it can. As much
Yeah,
as it
as
can.
much as it can. Yeah. So, and Mike Wilkerson, our producer, Mike, comments from the concealed carry world.
Yeah, well, and also from crisis negotiations, something that you guys glanced on 2 or 3 times that we kind of accidentally almost had a conversation about was crisis negotiation and how that is also pivoting.
Right.
And I think the vast majority of people don't realize how much pivot there is inside of the get after it, I need my police to go in there and kick ass, versus actually incorporating the people that are the counselors, that are the mental health experts / gurus / mechanics that try to now be put into place to make things so that it is far more way de-escalated than many people think, especially when a crisis situation happens. What I love about this program and why I'm so glad that all of us are here today is that every time we have a program like this, there's 5 or 6 other things that crop up that we are definitively going to have a program about. That's the magic of this, and frankly, the magic of podcasting. But 2 things about this case. One, intervene. There is something about there being good in the world.
Right.
And there was a situation I was going to bring up inside of the previous discussion here. It was about how I carry a tourniquet when I work at the gun range that I work at. And I'm always questioned about the tourniquet because, so you're saying you're a medical professional. No, I'm saying I don't want to die from blood loss. I mean, like, is it do we really have to paint that I'm a doctor because I carry a tourniquet? Those are the kinds of things that I cannot wait to have future discussions about because they really do matter. Would I apply that tourniquet to someone in the range that could use it and not die because of it? Absolutely.
Sure.
But then we also have the concept of the civil suits where if I don't apply it right, if I leave it on too long, if you lose your arm because I applied it inaccurately,
right,
those question marks all exist. But the bottom line, and what I always tell people, do good.
Yeah.
Do good.
And that line's a personal choice, right, Mike? Like,
Absolutely.
So me, for example, maybe I don't carry a tourniquet because I am afraid of that, and you do because you're willing to take that risk. That's an individual, determination of risk.
Agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Chief, final thoughts?
You know what? It was an interesting case. I do agree with you guys. I think criminal justice system did prevail. I mean, as much as it can. And I'll say this: people rip on the criminal justice system that we have here, but I think that it's the best in the world. You go around to other countries. I went to I was in the FBI National Academy, and we had people from all different countries that came in. Different criminal justice systems are very different than ours. And as many flaws as we have in our system, boy, I wouldn't want to be some of these other systems. I just have to say that as far as constitutional rights, and trying to be as fair and to have justice prevail, try to maintain that balance. I think that we've got a better system than many other places, probably every other.
I'd co-sign that for sure.
So,
yeah.
Anyway, thank you for joining us. Go over to copsandrobberstalk.com, the Two Guys Talking Podcast Network. Give us your comments. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you think about this episode. And we will see you next time.
And thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate your time and effort on this too.
Absolutely in place.
Appreciate it, guys. See ya. And so that's Cops and Robbers Talk.
You can find all of our episodes on copsandrobberstalk.com.